Okay, great. Thanks very much. Welcome everybody to the February 16th, 2016 meeting of the Sherborn Board of Selectmen. I'll ask our town administrator, Dave Williams, to please read the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. And we have a request to add one item. Then we'll look at public comment, and then a public hearing for Woodland Goulding. It's a poll hearing for Verizon, and then meeting with interested candidates for Board of Assessor vacancies. Then election warrant. Then 2016 annual town meeting prep. Specifically, consideration of proposal by Selectman Durensis to reopen the warrant and add a warrant article concerning establishment of combating opioid abuse committee. And then consideration of capital items, which I'd like to move to the 25th. And then financial items, we don't have those tonight. Operational items, town administrator report, and then selectmen reports. Set the next meeting on the meeting calendar. And then consideration of minutes, remove those from the agenda. And then consideration of warrant, and then adjournment.
Okay.
The item.
Oh, go ahead. What's the
I was
addition?
going to say the item that was requested to be added is an additional funding request for the fields at Sherborn for the Nobis study in an amount not to exceed $7,000.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I'd move to approve it. There's one typo with Dr. Koschel's last name. With that correction, I would move to approve.
You going to tell us the typo or keep us in suspense?
Add an L at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Okay, movement second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye, okay. Now we have public comment. Mr. Lifferton, were you going to comment? Okay.
Peter Lifferton, Dopping Brook Road. I'm speaking to an item later on the agenda, appointment to fill assessor vacancies. And you'll probably see that there are 3 names noted there, mine being one of them. I have reservations about proceeding in this direction, and actually I am going to withdraw my name from consideration for a couple of reasons. One, while I am not a real estate broker, I am a real estate agent, and some people find that there may be an implied conflict of interest there. But more importantly, the decision for you would come down to deciding between 3 very qualified and capable individuals. And I did not want to put you through that for the fact that I simply was volunteering to fill a vacancy for 2 to 3 months so that the town could continue to operate. George Fisk and I know and I are of the same mind that it's important that the town operate, and we've both served the town for decades, and we're basically volunteering to fill an emergency need. I had no intention of wanting to run again in the spring. And so where you have 2 qualified candidates, I'd like to simplify your selection process and the whole process, and I do withdraw on that basis. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Peter. And thanks for stepping forward, too. That was very town-minded of you. We appreciate it. Okay. Now we have a public hearing on Woodland Goulding Verizon poll hearing. I'm going to recuse myself and turn the gavel over to Paul and sit in the audience.
Can we do that early? We're actually 2 minutes early.
Oh, 2 minutes early? Okay. We're going to let you guys all just tell jokes for us.
All right.
Nobody knows good.
Are you accusing yourself because you prefer Comcast?
No, just a compliment.
Not today.
Whoa.
I don't think it's working.
Okay.
Well, technically, we do need to start at 6:15 and it is 6:14, so we do have 1 minute. Sorry to sound like a stickler for detail, but I'm a lawyer. So presentation for a few minutes. Do we have a representative here from, could you sit over at that table so that the microphone can pick you up? It being approximately 6:15, I'm going to call the hearing to order. The town published a notice of public hearing. It reads as follows: the Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, February 16, 2016, at 6:15 p.m. at Town Hall, 19 Washington Street, with regard to a petition by Verizon New England and Eversource Energy to relocate JO pole, which I gather JO means joint owned,
Point owned, sir.
pole number TI/EI, concurrently located at the center line of the intersection of Woodlawn Street and Goulding Street West. Oral and written comments are invited. We're going to start the hearing with a presentation from Verizon because it's your petition.
Thank you, sir. For the record, that's pole T1 and E1, not I, not TI or EI. It's pole number 1 for the telephone company and the N-Grid. My name is Thomas Blickarz, B as in boy, L-I-C-H-A-R-Z. I work for UC Synergetic, and we are consultants for Verizon for engineering and rights of way. So I'm here on behalf of Verizon to petition for this new location. I'm looking at the work order, sir, and it says the reason that we would like to relocate that pole is that the town request. The town is requesting us to relocate that pole from the island to the northwest direction to the side of the road for the purposes of reconstructing that intersection. So I suspect there's some sort of a program to redo that intersection, perhaps to make it safer.
Indeed.
It's a really tough corner there. So we are going to move that pole at your request and move the cables and wires that are attached to it to the other side of the road.
And the other side of the road means the other side of...
To the other
Woodland?
side of Woodland, sir. Yep. It's in the island now, and it's going to move over 2 lanes, you know, the
the north
east
side.
and west lane. It's going to move to the northwest side, sir. Yes, sir. And it'll be in the public way.
Is there someone here who can describe the intersection improvement for the record briefly? Thanks.
The purpose of the relocation is to create more of a T intersection of Woodland where it meets Goulding and continues down Woodland to South Main. This has been an article that has been voted on at town meeting, that's been designed, and funding has been
Could you speak up a little louder? And I'm even close to you.
Yeah, maybe you should come over to the microphone. And if you will, you might want to identify yourself, even though we here in the room all know who you are. But for the record, you're Ed Wagner and so on.
Ed Wagner, Director of CMD. The purpose of the pole relocation is to reconstruct the intersection. We are looking to create more of a T intersection. This has been vetted through traffic safety, public safety, voted on by a town meeting to improve the intersection and make it much safer.
I'll now open it up to the public for comment. Is there any public comment? Second time, is there any public comment?
Well, I'll draw your attention to a letter that was submitted, which you should have in front of you. It's not in the packet, it was loose. It's from the Devons. It's supportive.
Could you Since you have it in front of you, could you read it?
Sure. To whom it may concern, this letter is written in reference to the notice of public hearing to be held on Tuesday, February 16, 2016, for the petition to relocate a utility cable pole at the intersection of West Goulding and Woodland Street. We are unable to attend this hearing, but we support the relocation per the attached petition plan dated October 1st, 2015. And it's signed Ryan T. Devon and Jennifer L. Devon. Who are abutters, obviously.
Any other input? Yes?
Yeah, hi, Susan, you can hear my voice. Susan Tyler, I'm a member of the Traffic Safety Committee since 2004, and I just want to say that I personally support the reconstruction and redesign of this intersection, and Traffic Safety has unanimously supported this design all along.
Thank you. Is there any other input? Yes, sir.
Doug Hodge, 29 Woodland Street. Just want to let you know that we also endorse this plan, and we live at the corner of West Goulding and Woodland. Our house has a blind driveway, so we would greatly benefit from the enhanced improvement of this corner.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Is there any more comment? And hearing none, I'm going to close the public input part of this hearing and then ask the board if there's any questions from the board.
None here.
I'll ask a question from the gentleman from Verizon. So this is, the plan that you have in front of you is one that we designed? I
Yes, sir.
presume. And when you look at it, you say, yeah, that's the right place to put that pole?
I think it's the only place to put it out there.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Okay. Does anybody have a motion?
Is it in here?
Could I suggest a motion to approve?
I move to approve the petition by Verizon New England and Eversource Energy to relocate JO pole number T.1/E.1, currently located at the center line of the intersection of Woodland Street and Goulding Street West, to the northwest side of the intersection as indicated in the petition plan dated October 1st, 2015.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, then we'll call for a vote. All in favor, please signify. All opposed? It passes 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are still, good night, we're about
Thank you.
20 minutes ahead of schedule, even though we started 10 minutes late.
Look at Judy. What about the election warrant?
Is this one
That's
we
pretty
should-
straightforward.
We gotta wait for
She's not here.
Carol.
Is this one you can put,
She doesn't have to be here for that.
Is she coming though? I don't want to do this if she's coming at 7.
but Michael and Daryl are here, can we talk about Novus now? Not-
We didn't really add it any place on the agenda, did we?
Right.
Any place in particular. I guess we can, and then we'll just stop at 6:45, so that's a good way to do it. Okay?
Daryl Beardsley, Board of Health.
Oh, Michael Lessa, Conservation Commission.
So we never really want to have to come and ask for more money, but that is why we're here this evening. The town had hired a firm, Novus Engineering, for hydrogeologic services to help with evaluating the fields at Sherborn. And when I say evaluate, I mean just that, just to figure out what are the ins and outs of the project, help us understand it, which the peer reviewer is also doing, but to look at some issues that the that the applicant wasn't planning to look at, just to see whether there would be any issues for public health and safety. And without going into all the details, I will say that there have been some good outcomes through the process that we've been going through in terms of the exchange of information with the applicant, the peer reviewer, input from Nobis, and input from residents and others. But that's also what has made the project more complex, in that it's been a moving target over this time period. So we signed a contract with Nobis on November 4th. We had at that time a deadline of roughly mid-December for a decision. The applicant was moving ahead, was still refining their plans. And then at some point, and so Nobis had to be moving along quickly at that point as well with what they were looking at. And also trying to figure out what was already being done by the applicant and the peer reviewers, and then how they were supplementing that with some of their analyses. And then things started to change, and then there was a major revision in the plans, and so that happened, and that needed to be incorporated, and we were still on tight deadlines, and then more changes came, and so it's added to the amount of work that has to be done, or had to be done. And so I'll just give a summary, and then you can ask questions, or we could fill in on more details. So there were more complexities to the project, and there are a few things that are outstanding, yet to be done. And one is certainly finalizing the report to incorporate some of these changes in the project as time has gone along. There's also a possibility that Nobis has been asked to present at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. That was something that was not included in the original budget. And there are a few other analyses that may or may not be done by Nobis. It's possible that the peer reviewer may provide it, or the applicant, but there are a few remaining details that it would be good to wrap up. And some of those have not been wrapped up again because things have continued to change throughout the project. Including, we have, just to update you in case you haven't heard, we had a deadline of last week to make a decision, and the applicant requested an extension because of some of the information presented at the meeting last time, including that presented by Nobis. And so they requested an opportunity to go back and re-examine the plans, and we don't know what's going to come out of that just yet. So then we also have yet another point of uncertainty on whether we're going to get new information again, and whether we'd like to incorporate that into whatever Nobis's final piece of work is.
I'll add a little something from the Conservation Commission on that. Some of the additional cost is the fact that the initial work did show that there's significant amounts of nitrogen or nitrate, and then there's also the related contaminants that will be going towards the wetland. So it made that issue much more significant in terms of us making sure we get the appropriate rough bounding of the quantification of that, so that we have that kind of information available to that we would, as part of what we had said before, that we would submit that to the DEP as part of their decision making and as part of any future decision making that comes out, because there's enough project changes that might come back before us anyway, given that there seem to be even more changes occurring. So part of the increase is the fact that there were findings that led to the need for more work and analysis to be done. And I probably think that this not to exceed amount does try to build in a little bit of expectations that there will be some changes that then Nobis can react to. Last time when it came up as an issue of, okay, is this a moving target? Does it keep going there? And we tried to keep it quite bounded, but in the end it has changed. There were data changes, and incorrect data or data that needed to be checked and revised was what was done, used in the analysis. It turned out that had to be redone based on upon scrutiny of the data. which introduced some time.
Which, I'll just note, the scrutiny came from Novus. Novus identified issues, problems with the data that then the design team went back to take a look at again, and the peer reviewers, so it hadn't been caught prior to that, so.
And the meeting times have been long on this project. Speaking for what Novus had to do and what might have to do in terms of meeting again and stuff like that. So this tried to be a little bit more, so because in the end, this project has to be, if the deadline is held now, which is I guess March 1st, and the ZBA is still should also have had an extension to March 1st, but it's unclear whether they've done that. They might be still with a February 18th. All of this has to be wrapped up, finalized, and tied up in the next week or so. And so therefore, there's not time to sort of do this incrementally. And there has barely been time to refine actually all of the actual budget numbers. That's why it's sort of not to exceed. We could talk about it with David afterwards, but it's a very tight schedule, and it has been, and there's been a lot of hopping too. Just when we thought everything was on the 18th, and then enough things came up that they had to do more stuff. So it's been a intensive process trying to deal with the regulatory guidelines and deadlines and moving on. But so this tried to be built in a little flexibility here, so that because we won't have the time to come back here, it's not like a more measured process. We have to be prepared to jump and be done with this.
So is this, you're not requested going to be, you described it as a not to exceed amount, is it going to be incurred on an hourly basis, or, I mean?
Yes,
is
they
that-
track their time hourly.
And what's the total budget? It's a little north of 16,000 so far.
16.2, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right. So this would make it 23.2 altogether.
If I could, to speak in favor of this, make a couple of points. I've been following this from the inception, and this hydrologist has been very useful and very competent, and was a good choice for the town, good fit, I think, with the needs that the town has. So we're starting with a good resource. And when you have something that's good, you want to fully get its value. Secondly, having gone through other 40Bs here in this town and in other towns, I know that money spent now saves money in multiple amounts later. It's literally the old saying that a pound of prevention is worth a
I think an ounce of prevention.
ounce of prevention is worth a pound of whatever it is, cure later. Sorry, I botched that, but the point is that a little bit of money spent now really will pay dividends in the future. And the next point I would make is that we have to stay focused on the fact that we need to protect our town and our citizens. And if we don't spend this money, there is a risk, from what I've read in the papers, there is a risk of damage to our wetlands, damage to drinking water. This is a site that people are going to try to be living on and may end up having to suffer from inadequate water supplies, and may end up somehow being dumped on the town with an obligation for us to try and figure out a way to save people. So we certainly have got to undertake the responsible view of protecting all the town and the citizens. On the issue of the expenditure, the amount of the expenditure, it was a few days ago that the need was identified, and the need was identified in the context of the Board of Appeals coming up with a meeting on Thursday. It was a mere fortuity that we, the Board of Selectmen, had a meeting on Tuesday this week that would allow them to come to us before the meeting. Given the way this project has evolved, I think we don't need to have them, our Conservation Commission and our Board of Health, studying our schedule to figure out when are they coming in for another few dollars. We need to give them a little bit of a head of steam so they can use what is necessary to defend the town without coming back to us. There may be occasions when we're not having a meeting, and we certainly don't want them to forego something that's needed because our schedule didn't allow them to come to us. So I think we need to give them some money that hopefully all of it won't be spent, but if it needs to be spent, it's money well spent. And the source of funds would be the same as the precedent that we established the last time, which is out of the legal budget for the time being. And there are sufficient funds there to cover this. Thank you.
Yeah, I got a couple. One, I sat and watched probably 2/3 of your meeting the other night. And if anyone wants to question how difficult the timelines have been for this project, you should watch the dance that they were trying to dance at the tail end of their meeting, trying to figure out when they could meet to go over the data that they didn't have yet and the data that Novus didn't have yet before the zoning board meeting, which was supposed to be last. The dates are messed up because I watched it a week later, but it was painful to see how they were bending over backwards to try and get into a meeting just days after he was handing them data that he knew he was handing them late, or they didn't have it all. I don't think the peer reviewer hadn't had it yet, therefore the consultant didn't have it. That feeds into, hopefully at the end of this, I'm hoping once this is all over, we'll get a chance to think about this process before another 40B kicks off, or something like this kicks off, because we're running behind and we're spending money to run behind, and the dates are a moving target, as is the money. So hopefully we'll all get to hash that out after this process, because I don't think this was ideal. I know you guys aren't getting a whole lot of sleep in the amount of meetings you're sitting through.
And I don't know what kind of control we have over that, but
Neither do I.
Oh, there's interesting issues of how you set more rules about when you get information, don't, but then the regulatory deadlines could override all your procedural stuff, so it's a tricky balance. But we agree with you.
It is. And I'm
we've
feeling your
had
pain.
Yeah, we have to figure out better ways to do it, but we don't have a lot of control sometimes.
And what I'll say now about spending more money is we don't have a finished product at the moment. So I think we somewhat knew this from the beginning. We knew this was going to get them running, but we're here. It's pointless to have done any of this study. Not pointless, but it wouldn't make sense to stop now. If ZBA is saying they need him to make a presentation, we got to pay for that presentation. We don't have much of a choice. And I think the two people sitting at this table couldn't be more fiscally conservative. If they're asking for money, I'm pretty sure we should feel comfortable that it's going to be well spent.
I will say that Novus has been very responsive, because this has not been simple, and we've been throwing things at them last minute as they come to us last minute. So
Have you been pleased with Vernon's presentation at
yes,
various meetings?
I think, and he's very measured, and he's sticking to his science, and he's very careful, and has, as we said, raised good questions about certain data that, again, just having those kinds of things cleaned up and cleared up is very useful.
If you had had access to him earlier in the process, do you think we'd be looking at a more reasonable project today?
Great question.
But it's that feedback loop, because he has not, there are a few things he has developed that are new pieces of information that are outside that help us understand town conditions in general better. But then there's a fair amount of his analysis that is based on the applicant's information that's been submitted. I think between both the peer reviewer and Novus asking various questions about that data, it's helped clean that.
Would the applicants submit different data if they already knew that you had
Oh,
some
would they
information
have?
at hand?
There
I don't know,
were-
it's just speculation.
Without going too much into it, there were technical, professional issues, methodological, that's the one I want, methodological issues with some of the data that was presented.
But I would-
Without, again, little minor detail, just groundwater contour lines that would have crossed, which should never, can't happen in reality. So just that the data would say that is just not right.
I would say that there has been a lot of learning from this process of a project of this size, and I'd say it's even stuff beyond what other towns have dealt with. I mean, this kind of level of analysis, because it's the density and the type of site in particular, the highlights of some of the nitrogen issues or the nitrate issues are particularly important in this particular case, but I'd say the kind of analyses that have come out over time that we've learned about is stuff that other people find, wow, this is an interesting issue, even when I talk to DEP about it and say, how right, this is stuff that they haven't confronted or thought through. So in a way, I would say I've learned a lot about what I would be looking for more upfront so that, right, we could have a better process in terms of these are the kind of things we need the next time around so that we just make sure all this stuff is addressed up front. And one could be a little more forceful about those requirements based on now knowing that these issues can flare up, because as opposed, because you have that dance with the applicant of, oh, I don't have to do that kind of stuff, because there's a whole gray area as to what you can require based on what you think are the issues and what you want to avoid any problems from. But I think when we will know more about how you can sort of specify that stuff up front so we get them to get a better application in a way, that we talk about the lessons learned are critical for us going forward for other projects.
And I agree with Sean that we need to capture all those lessons learned.
Yeah.
There have been quite enough.
Yeah, I think we could do better, and the process, and it's always, but it depends on the applicant. When you see other applications and what other people have dealt with in other towns, it's very variable as to what you get from applicants, but and what you can get from them versus you have to force it out of them, and then sometimes forcing becomes more costly than just working it out together. We've tried to work along the way about the fact that these are issues that are going to come up, and whether there's ways to change the project in some other more significant ways that could avoid some of these things, but that hasn't been an option that's been ever put on the table yet. So therefore, it's pushed it to the limit because it's whatever, that they're entitled to it. I mean, to their view of what the project should be like and what they think is appropriate. And it, to some extent, becomes just a difference of opinion or views of what the consequences are of that.
In defense of the process,
I
could
was
I
going to have
say
some
that
comments too.
the law changed here? Do you have?
I had some comments too. I thought we were trying to take turns.
Yeah, sure.
So, Darrell, you mentioned something about generalized lessons for the town. Would the consultant be able to translate those into something more generalized that's actually a product that you could use in a future application?
I would say, you mean within this
Well,
context?
if I-
Probably not, because he's so careful about what he's presenting and how. So to go to a generalized thing.
I guess you made the comment that you've learned things from this consultant,
Yes.
including things that were helpful to the town as a
Learning
whole.
about the bedrock and the orientation of the fractures in town from what he's observed.
So I guess that's what I'm asking.
Limited
Is there
bedrock
something is there a product or a set of information that we want to hang on to in a form other than just dropping it in the file for this case and forgetting about it forever?
Yes, I would say so.
I think the types of analyses, the specifics, each project would have probably a different way you go at it, but the whole idea of looking at some of the nitrogen issues at certain levels, or the fractures, or the density of well, that there are some generalizations that maybe, I don't think it's I think they're fairly broad enough that we can summarize them ourselves as opposed to the consultant would produce a template for how the analysis would be done, other than knowing that it's there and knowing that we've done it in the past and somebody could go back to it. But
Yeah, I
I'm
just
not
wanna-
sure that the consultant itself, I'm not sure it's not budget for that at the moment, but I'm not sure that it would be worth spending the money other than having it as a template and knowing that this kind of analysis is something to consider doing, depending on the site, would be the way to generalize the lessons, is my first
Yes, I
kind
see.
of-
And
Yeah.
the bedrock and the understand, since we all, almost all, not everybody, but has a bedrock well, and knowing more about the fractures and then how there's the connection between the overburden and the fractures and.
So I see our
that.
planning board chairman here, and I know they're doing a master plan or a comprehensive plan for the town. And I mean,
Oh, too.
this is another $7,000, so that takes the budget up to, what, about 24,000, which is money well spent to help the town with this project. But if we can get extra value out of that work by having it feed into other things that we may want to know or remember in the future, that would be helpful. So I would just urge you to think about generalized lessons and information that you could retain outside the context of this project.
No, I would like to do that since, because of this project, I miss participating in the built environment project, so, so we can, provide some information about water resources, certainly.
Paul, you had some comments?
Well, I was just going to feed off of something that Michael was saying, I guess what you're saying too, which is there was a court decision that suddenly focused everybody's attention on water issues in connection with 40Bs in a way that didn't exist before. I mean, it existed theoretically, but with that Reynolds versus Stowe case and the fact that a 40B was denied on that basis caused everybody from the lawyers to the scientists to the developers and to Concoms around the state and boards of health around the state. Suddenly this has become a real focus point. We didn't have that when this process was in the initial stages of things. So the process going forward to other projects, we can now benefit from the fact that the law is different now. The law is clearer now. Now we know that we need to focus on these things, particularly for a community like Sherborn. And so we can plan for that and build that into the process from a planning point of view. So I just want to defend a little bit the Board of Appeals and all the people involved in the process. It was trying to implement a new matrix.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Yes, I have a motion.
Yeah, okay, good.
Move to authorize the expenditure of up to $7,000, with the source of funds being the town council legal budget, to provide additional services by the hydrologist Jim Vernon at Nobis, to be spent under the supervision of the town administrator, the Board of Health, and the Conservation Commission.
Okay,
Second.
second on that. Second, good. Some discussion. David, do you have a number for us in terms of what's left in the legal budget? Sure.
No, I
Irene's
don't
not
have
here.
that.
But you're confident it's more than $7,000 plus whatever we need to pay our town council?
For now, yeah, until we get towards the year end, we may have to do a transfer. But I think we knew that going in.
Yeah. Chuck?
Quick question, in terms of your motion, Paul, do we need to add ZBA to that as well, in terms of the groups that are authorizing the work, or the three committees are certainly working together, but
Yes, we're supporting three committees, but no, I wouldn't add the ZBA as supervising the expenditures because this is evidence being submitted to the ZBA, and rather than having them guide the evidence that's being presented to them, it's a little cleaner to have it come.
that makes sense, so they're the reviewing board. That makes sense, thanks.
So we have a motion and second. All in favor of that motion? Okay, 5-0. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you for seeing us but not being on the agenda first.
And I should
This is
say,
the
for-
earliest you could.
yeah, I should say also for all of the work you're putting into this project. Okay, next we have a meeting with our interested candidates for Board of Assessors vacancies. And do we have, I see George, do we have Drew Cauchel here?
Right back.
Oh, good, okay. And we have Wendy here, good. And I don't know how people want to proceed with this. We certainly have two very well qualified by resume candidates and two people who have stepped forward for the town in a time of dire need for new assessors, since we've lost two of our three assessors to resignation. So does anybody have a suggestion on what they want to accomplish in this session? And
Can we ask Wendy to introduce the two candidates?
let's do
I don't know
that.
who this guy is.
Yeah, okay, good. Come on, Wendy.
I suggest you have each candidate get up for 30 seconds. And
Yeah, I think we will. I think Wendy's gonna.
So this is George Fisk, who I've had the pleasure of meeting, I think, maybe once in the hallway. And he has shown an interest to come on temporarily, correct, until the spring. And then this is Dhruv Kashal, and you have his resume, and we reviewed that.
Very impressive resume.
So here are our candidates.
Great, and thanks for stepping forward on this.
Yes, thank you.
If you want to say anything, feel free to walk up to the table if you could. Wendy. Nice to see you.
Well, why don't I speak first here? The reason I'm doing this is because I was asked to do this. I had a conversation with Amy Davidson, and I know she had communicated with Wendy and also with Ken McDonough, who was the remaining member of the Board of Assessors. And I essentially I'm doing this, offering my services to do this in order that the Board of Assessors can conduct their business affairs. With just one member, I think they're really stuck, at least for the time being. A few things quickly to be said. One is that I was encouraged to, and I did speak with a woman who's an attorney with the State Ethics Commission, who apparently people, I guess, Wendy, I don't know if you've been speaking with Ms. Roney or not, but I had couple of conversations with her, and I wanted to explain to her a little more clearly why I was doing this, but also my circumstances, particularly as it relates to the fact that I am on the Town Caucus Committee and have been moderating, and perhaps will be moderating again this year, and that clearly I am only really stepping in if it's decided that I should be, until the town election. I certainly wouldn't want to be up at the podium asking for nominations and then expecting that my name would be put in. So I really am only looking at this on an interim basis. A couple of things, though, beyond, and that is that I've spoken, I am concerned about the board and the need to bring on some new members, not simply because I would only be on a temporary basis, but Ken McDonough, the remaining member, his term happens to be up this year, and he has decided not to rerun. So, this is an important board to have filled, and so I'm encouraging you and anybody who might be watching, listening, to think about people who you believe might be good, capable people to serve in that role and would also enjoy it. So it's important. I will tell you that the caucus committee has talked about this, and there are some people who are being approached to see if they might very well be interested. So it's an issue. We're always concerned each year making sure that we have at least one candidate for each role. And this year, the Board of Assessors seems to be a little bit of a challenge. I would also say that if you decided to have me serve in that interim role, I would hope that maybe I could be a fence viewer too, because historically the assessors were also appointed fence viewers, and I've always wanted to be a fence viewer. So.
Always wanted you to be one.
Missing that on your resume?
I've been looking for a fence viewer for 20 years.
Okay, and Mr. Kaushal, how do you say Kaushal?
Kashal.
Kaushal?
Yeah. Well, I have less to say. My name is Drew Kashal. Frank Jenkins, our neighbor, approached me about this vacancy, and I am happy to serve in whatever way I can if you'll have me.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say that Coursebrook Road has sent some fine leaders to this town. Chuck and I both live on Coursebrook Road, so
In the same house?
yeah, not the same one, different times. So
Mr. Will.
it's the well, yeah. Exactly. And so you don't have any direct like long experience in the town, but you clearly have a lot of analytical experience, which I would think would be helpful on this position.
It would make sense for you to take a minute to explain. You're on TV. I don't know if you know that. To the whole community, it might make sense for you to explain a little bit about your background.
Okay.
We have it in front of us,
Sure. Okay.
but our viewers don't.
I guess for the record, then, I'm an attorney. I was formerly licensed as a certified public accountant in Massachusetts, but am no longer licensed. In terms of business before the board, I haven't had any. We're residents of the town and we own our home, but that is really the extent of our interactions with the assessment process.
I think it's great. David, what's the procedure now? We've got two qualified candidates. Are we appointing them, or is it something we need to do with the remaining assessor? How does that work?
No, you're appointing them to fill the vacancy until the next election.
Okay.
I have a quick question for Dr. Kashal.
Yes.
Are you interested in continuing to serve on the Board of Assessors? These are positions through 2016, so...
Right, this is to fill it until the next election, which is in May, so I guess we'd understood you were interested in running. At this point, it sounds like you'd be the only one interested in running until George can find two more people.
I think that's. I'd say I'm open to running. I hadn't realized that all 3 seats would be vacant in May. I'm certainly open to running. This seems like a good sort of test period, a few meetings to see if it's a good fit. But I'm open to it. I'd say.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully.
I'll be speaking with him.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, with Ken leaving, there's going to be a lot of institutional knowledge that's left that board, and if you can't convince him, George, to change his mind, maybe you can facilitate at least having him download enough information to Dr. Kushel and also whoever else indicates an interest in running.
There is a possibility, it may be remote, but there is a possibility of someone who previously served as an assessor coming back.
Okay.
Dr. Kashal, you can consider this a provisional application with just a very short timeline for you to decide. Sorry, it's a
Well, can I make a motion now?
patent job.
Please.
Yeah, and just one more thing, George, to clarify, there's no problem with you being appointed before caucus, right? Your duties as caucus chair would only conflict if you were running for a seat, is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
So, can I make a motion?
I think we have audience comment.
Since this is an elected board, doesn't it take participation from you and the remaining members?
Well, I believe they were notified of the meeting. They were properly notified at their last discussion. We said that they didn't need to participate because the time frame had gone on so long.
So I think we're all right.
Yeah. With only
And
one member left, I'm not
There's
sure.
one
it makes a
member left,
practical
there's there'd be a total of 6 votes. 4 would be necessary to vote on this, and we'll see if we can get 4 votes. If I can make the motion.
For 2 seats with 2 candidates, let's see if we can do this.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to make one motion for 2 candidates, if I would, rather
Please do
than
that.
2 motions, one for each candidate. So I would move that George Fisk and Dr. Claus
Drew Kashal.
Drew Kashal be appointed assessors of the town of Sherborn until the next election.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of
This is
that?
a roll call
It's
vote.
a roll call vote. Mr. Yan?
Yes.
Mr.
Aye.
Durensis?
Aye.
Mr. Clean?
Yes.
Mr. Brandon?
Yes.
And I'm yes, so it's 5-0.
So
And
you are elected.
Congratulations, and more importantly, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're really helping the town out in a tough time on the Board of Assessors. So, you will need to be sworn in with the town clerk, who's going to show up in a minute. If you want to wait, I think she's showing up, isn't she, David? She's not showing up. Okay, she's on the agenda, but she's not showing up. So you'll have to find the town clerk and get sworn in. Okay? Thank you. Okay, so I thought we had the town clerk showing up. It's fine. I don't think there's any essential part of this. Okay, so we have this warrant. I guess the election warrant doesn't identify candidates for this election. It's just a list of the seats you're filling at this election. So it's a presidential preference, state committee woman, state committee man, and town committee for the town. I guess we need a motion to approve.
I'll make that
This
motion
election warrant.
with a caveat.
Yes.
The motion would be to approve the issuance of the warrant calling a presidential preference primary, and election of state committee men and women and town committee for March 1, 2016. And my caveat is that I believe the general laws say that this has to be done 35 days in advance of the election, March 1st being 14 days. There may be,
This was presented to us tonight, so.
yeah.
All right, so it's been moved. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Okay, somebody just explain the meaning of the caveat to me.
Well,
I
several,
get
several
that
times
it's
in the past, we've
short,
had to
but-
go get special acts of the legislature to validate elections that were held in the town because we didn't comply with different notices. So there is a provision that we can ask the governor to retroactively correct anything if it's wrong. I'm not here to have a fight with anybody, but there's a statute that says any question has to go 35 days before the election. This was a time limit that the town clerks of Massachusetts requested because they wanted time to prepare ballots, make sure everything was done correctly and run it by the Secretary of State. They needed that time window.
So we
Thanks.
were asked about this, I think, a week ago when we had our meeting, whatever our last meeting was. And I did ask the question whether there was enough time to take it up at this meeting, and was told yes. I think I was told that either by you, Diane, or you, David. We also, at the time, didn't even have this piece of paper. So I'm not sure what we could have done differently. This doesn't originate with the Selectmen's office. Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second, I think.
Yes.
Any further discussion? It's pretty simple. We just sign our names. Okay, all in favor? Great.
Do we have town committees who are going to be on the ballot? Whereas Nancy, is there going to be a Democratic town committee be on the ballot?
We did our duty, so I'm assuming we're here. Had to do it way back in November.
It's not included here in the,
It just says town committee.
it just says town committee.
What is the town committee?
Well, I assume, did the Republican Party have a town committee submission? Does anybody know?
You're asking the wrong person.
I'll tell you.
The notice is fairly generic. It's candidates of political parties for these offices, so I think it's not even limited to
I have to
Republican or Democratic.
I have to figure our town clerk followed the form that she was advised to follow, I would think.
I would think that if the Libertarian Committee already had a town committee, they would fall within this notice.
Next is consideration of NOIs and warrant articles. Consideration of a proposal by Selectman Durensis to reopen the warrant and add a warrant article concerning the establishment of combating opioid abuse committee.
Are those two separate items?
I don't know, David.
No, the only item that we had that came up to be added was this article. So if you were going to vote to add the article, you'd have to vote to open and close the warrant.
Do we have a, where are we on the warrant as a whole? I mean,
Well,
do we have a warrant that we should be signing soon, or what's our?
no, there are 2 or 3 things that need to be worked out. One is the placement of the bylaw for the exemption to the promoter license. Wasn't sure exactly where that should go. And then one other article needs to be removed from, that was requested by the advisory committee. And we still haven't had the kennel license bylaw come in front of you, although you have it on the warrant.
And that's who's that?
That's the town clerk.
I can help you offline with the placement of the
Promoter license.
promoter license.
So I have just a list of the warrant articles right now.
Well, you've got a whole set of minutes here in the back, David, which talks about what we did in our Saturday meeting back in January on the various warrant articles. And I think looking at this, we had articles 27 and 28. A vote on these articles will be had at a later meeting of the selectmen, awaiting refined language to those articles. I don't recall what those articles numbered 27, 28 were at that time.
I don't think we ever voted on.
Well, it was 27, 28, and then Article 30, I don't know that we voted on that, and I don't know what the refined language was on that. Do you know?
No, these saying what article it is isn't going to help me.
Okay, but I'm just looking for that information figuring in front of us tonight. We should be prepared.
I have to go back to see
discuss it.
the listing, when they were numbered at the time.
When are we planning to issue the warrant?
Probably you could do it on the night of the 25th.
That's next week's meeting. I think we should. I don't see any reason to wait.
When is Bloody Saturday?
March.
Don't sanction the name for that, David, by answering the question. Come on.
Yes, that is. That is March 5th.
It's March 12th.
No, the 12th. That's 12th.
You told us that was March 12th.
So it's March 12th. It would be nice to let them have it soon, so that they can get whatever notices out and let them get out and all that stuff.
That's what we're saying next week. I mean, I would think we would be ready. This is the first I'm hearing about the order of the articles. I mean, I thought we were ready, David, so we should definitely be ready by next Thursday.
There's just the placement of that one article, and then removal of the advisory article. And I don't know if that requires do you vote to remove that article?
Yes.
Or do you
Or you
just
just
take
leave it
no
on and
action?
pass it over. I mean, it's-
Right.
But there were two things he referenced to that we hadn't voted on yet because we were waiting for language.
And which ones?
There were two articles.
Diane, could you go down and get the notes that would tell you what the numbering was as at the time of our Saturday meeting, please?
Yeah, I think there are three articles, 27, 28, and 30, according to the minutes. We're waiting on the language.
Just I haven't seen the draft warrant in a while.
Those were the downtown articles.
Those were
The
those.
town center water options, I think.
No, the only language ones that hadn't been worked
Let's not
out
speculate, let's just find out what they are.
was the promoter language and the advisory language on those two special stabilization fund articles. All the other language you reviewed on that day.
Well, I think the chair is suggesting, and I seconded, that we address any loose ends on the warrant and any final votes on advisory article and final language and some other articles. Is that what you were?
Yeah, I think we gotta get this done and signed next Thursday. Or at least get it done next Thursday, get it signed individually after that, and vote it, and then sign what's any revisions in there. Speedy, Diane, thank you. So yeah, are you able to?
Yes, the circuit breaker to 27.
28 was the capital stabilization fund,
So those are the two advisory articles that we were waiting for.
And
We're
out
at
of the
30.
30 was the
the kennel license.
Kennel license, which we don't have any language on.
No, we have it. Language is being developed to mirror state law and provide, it would have gone out on the last version of the warrant that we sent out.
Okay, so we have kennel license language in the warrant now.
Yeah.
But we didn't vote it yet.
You didn't vote to support it or not.
Well, we haven't voted to support much of anything.
Right.
We voted that Saturday to add things to the
But
warrant.
we didn't even vote to put it on the warrant, right, subject to final language. That's what you just read.
A vote on these articles will be held at a later meeting of the selectmen, awaiting revised language. That's Diane's notes on that.
So they're not even on the warrant yet. I think he wanted to see the final language before you voted on it.
Yeah, unless we did it at a later meeting. I don't have my notes from those meetings. So.
You didn't review
Yeah, I don't think
kennel
we did.
language.
I don't think we did. All right. So what are we doing, Paul?
Well, I think I want to hold that issue for the time being.
Okay.
But I do want to give a sort of a general report, kind of an update from where we were the last time we discussed this, which might have been the last meeting, to now. Some things have happened. The purpose of bringing it up was to see where we are and what can we do to add to it and to build upon where we are. There's clearly a need for a town committee. Since the last meeting, first I had a chance to talk a little bit about the whole issue of the MMA recommendations with the governor, and I did have a chance to tell him about the Sergeant Testone story that he reported here at the last meeting, and that was met with approval. I did have 5 people approach me, citizens of the town, who have told me that in their view, there is a problem in the town that's not really addressed. These have to do with older people who are not in the span DS age group. These are people who have gotten involved with painkillers. They do not want to have law enforcement know about their issues. They have careers, they have reputations. The word that one person used was that there are people hiding in plain sight here in this community who are living lives of desperation. And they don't see the town right now as a resource. I'm not sure how to help them. Another thing that's happened since our last meeting was that Karen Polito, the Lieutenant Governor, has told me that she's asked Sean Cronin, who is with the Department of Revenue, to put together a program that would tie into the community compacts that they have now with 170 odd communities. And through the community compacts that they would try to provide all kinds of assistance to the towns who have community compacts dealing with how to combat opioid abuse. So this would be more state directed with more state aid, and we are a compact community. I just don't know how long Sean Cronin would need to get the program up and running. Another thing that's happened since the last meeting was a suggestion was made to me, what about the Board of Health, because there are 2 doctors on the Board of Health. And initially I said no to that, but since then I have talked to the Board of Health informally about this, and there is some interest in that. I plan to have a further discussion with the Board of Health to see what role they might play, particularly with regard to this group of sort of older people who I mentioned before. So for all those reasons, I don't think the community is quite ready for tracking what other communities are doing on setting up a formal separate committee and appropriating money. I think I presented that more as a challenge to the community and as a way of getting people to focus on the fact that more needs to be done. And when you ask for money, that in some people's minds makes it really serious. If you ask us to put our money where our mouth is, that makes it serious, but I think that just needs to be thought through some more. And as I say, I do want to see what the community compact comes up with, and I do want to see what the Board of Health might be willing to do. So I'm not prepared to go forward right now with the article that I had copied from other towns.
Okay, good. So I don't know if we need to discuss any further. Okay, great, thank you, Paul. Consideration of capital items, police, fire, CMD, and town buildings.
Those items we're going to do on the 25th.
We're moving those to the 25th, okay. We didn't say that during the agenda reading, but.
No, he did.
Oh,
Yeah.
we did, okay.
Yeah.
So that was part of that was the deletion.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
See, I told you before, David, I wasn't going to ask you anything about the warrant or...
I should have known.
Okay. We have routine business, finance report, no finance report, unless David's got something to report.
No, we've been taking the budgets to advisory, and it's been going going fine with
Okay.
reviewing the selectmen budgets. It's been going very smoothly. So,
Yeah. Town administrator's report?
I'm sorry, that was the town administrator's.
Oh, that's it. We're doing great, good. Okay. Now, we have a meeting next Thursday, the 25th. I don't know if people want to try to set the first March meeting.
What about selectmen reports?
What's
Yeah,
that?
did you skip that?
We booked 2 meetings for the month of March.
Did we already book 2 meetings?
No, can we book
Oh,
tonight?
yeah, we can.
Wait, we have the 25th?
Of February.
Yes.
Didn't have that.
Diane, you weren't going to tell them?
I don't need, I won't be.
We have the 25th,
Yeah.
The 5th?
Yeah, the
2/5?
2/5.
Yeah, the third
Next
is
Thursday.
the third is town caucus.
I gave you 2 dates that were out for
You
me.
couldn't make the 10th, and I printed the
You got the
number
12th
out.
for all day, right?
If it was the 10th, it would have to be the 24th.
You told me that you were unavailable March 10th and the 24th, so we need to book selectmen's,
Okay, the 24th is the Thursday.
your commitments are the 10th and 24th.
That's when my Board of Medicine meets.
Right.
Okay. The third is town caucus, so we could meet Wednesday the 9th potentially.
That's good.
9th is the last advisory hearing. If
Are we involved with that?
that, I may have something to go there for. I don't know.
Okay.
But
If
Diane
you do,
can
we'll
cover.
excuse you. Okay. Can people do the 9th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's March.
Yeah, he's in the March.
I think I am out of the country.
Okay.
Happy to meet wherever you are.
Yeah, it's got
Don't say that.
Hey, Mark, would you have been out on the 10th as well? Not that I'm looking to know where you're going, but I just,
Oh,
I feel like we may have been,
I'm not trying to hide anything.
we may have been a 4-person
Yeah.
board that week, no matter what day we pick. That's what I'm getting.
We're gonna try and vote on this stuff before the 12th, right?
Yeah, we have to.
Right.
25th.
25th will be the first time it's back in front of us.
Okay, sorry, March, I'm gone from March 1st and back on,
So you could do the 9th? Your first day back, what a way to re-enter.
jump in the deep end.
sure,
Okay, all right, good. So we're doing the 9th, thanks, Mark. Okay, and then I guess,
23rd?
can we do the 23rd?
Or if you want to do Thursdays, I can do the 17th and the 31st.
Yeah, the 17th I can't do.
23rd works for me.
23rd, I think we have to stick to every 2 weeks also. The 31st is too far out. We may want to do the 31st also.
23rd works
Let's
for
do
me.
the 23rd, okay, great. Everybody good with those
Mark
days?
couldn't do Wednesdays. You can do the 23rd?
yeah, Wednesdays are actually not good.
How about Tuesday the 22nd?
Yep.
Okay, everybody okay with the 22nd?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, I still think it's worthwhile to try to get a full board. I don't,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
different philosophies, but I think it's, well, you're the guy who can't make the regular meeting dates, so of course you're gonna say absolutely, but I do think it's helpful for all of us to do that.
8th? No, you're flying home, aren't you?
You're away on that day?
Yeah. Oh, the 9th.
So the 9th and the 22nd,
So we just did the 25th.
Um,
and February
Yeah, you said you couldn't be here the 8th. It was
9th
9th.
and 22nd.
Someone just said, well, Tuesday the 8th.
This,
But he can't be.
do we want to schedule the 31st as well?
So just to be clear,
Yes.
we just picked the 9th of March
Right.
and the 22nd of March.
Right.
Okay.
And we'll be back on
Thank you.
our Thursday schedule if we schedule one for 3:31.
3:31,
I'm good.
okay.
That's a yes?
Yeah,
Mark's still like a week behind. Hold on. I'm not kidding. I don't want to get all the way through
Look
it.
at my face.
I hate taking stuff back off of my calendar.
Flip the pages over one at a time.
Why the 31st?
That's when I wish I had a piece of paper.
Why the 31st?
We just thought we were going to have a lot to do, but maybe we won't have a lot to do. You think between the advisory hearing and town meeting, we're going to have less to do?
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
We can always cancel it.
Yeah, let's book it
Okay,
now.
March 31st.
That's fine.
Yes?
Yes.
If needed, if needed.
Yes, if needed, Diane.
We're all in for the 31st now.
Good, all right, good. Selectmen reports.
I had something. Sean, do you have something, Paul?
I had two.
Okay.
Want me to go first?
Sure.
I wanted to express my appreciation to our CM&D and police and fire and all who were involved in connection with the sort of surprise storm hit us a week ago. I say it was a surprise because originally they said it was going to pass to the south and it said it was going to be an inch. And then like a day before, suddenly the totals kept mounting every time you turned on the TV. And indeed, Massachusetts was clobbered with heavy wet snow. There were a lot of trees down, there were people without power, and our crews were out there. They worked very hard. We were able to get the job done. I want to thank all of the people at CM&D, from the head Wagner all the way down to every last person. I want to thank all the contractors who helped us. I want to thank the police. I want to thank the fire. I'm trying to think if I've missed anybody.
The town administrator.
Town administrator, I would add to that list.
Town administrator. I know that there were people out there who were without power and were upset at that, but power was restored. Things did get fixed. It all worked out well at the end of the day. The other item I had was really a question for the town administrator. That is, some time ago, you may recall, we have not appointed someone to the Board of Trustees of Leland Farms. And because there's no one there as the trustee, some issues came up about the roof was leaking, and the trustees there felt that the building of an installation of the roof perhaps wasn't done correctly. They presented their concerns to me and I think to David. And to resolve that, we developed a solution. It was a twofold solution. First, we tried to locate and identify any warranty documents or contract documents relating to the installation of the roof. And secondly, I had heard from other towns that there was a federal program to provide funds to sites that were affordable housing for just things like this. We had Gino Carlucci look into it, and he identified a possible funding source. And then that's when I stepped out of it, thinking that we'd either find the documents or we would get some grant assistance. And then, lo and behold, I'm reading some minutes, and the minutes say that there was extensive damage to Leland Farms because of roof leaks. And so I wonder what happened between the time where we left it, where the last conversation with the Leland Farm trustees, and the present.
I have to go back and review notes, Paul. I don't have that answer off the top of my head. But I'll follow up with Gino and get back to you.
Did we ever get them the documents?
No, I notified you that there were no documents found anywhere in town hall about the roof or about the warranty. But the funding item that you said about the grant, I gotta check with Gina. I don't remember that.
Just a point of clarification, that all those roofs got redone this year. We're not discussing current issues with the roof. It was prior to that, right?
Yes, this was like last year.
I just don't want anyone to think that there's leaks right now with the roof that just got done this summer. Right?
Did that get paid for from the warranty?
I have no idea how that got paid for,
No, it
but I
didn't
want to
get
make
paid
sure
for.
that no one thinks that the contractor that did that work,
I'm
who
pretty
happens to be a
sure that-
Sherborn resident.
They voted a special assessment on themselves to do that work.
Is that what they did? Is that the solution?
So was the thought the original roof warranty was because the town oversaw or the housing?
But usually a roof lasts like 10 or 20
No, I
years.
get that, but
This
why-
failed after like 8 years or something.
Okay, so I guess why would the expectation be that the town would be keeper of the records for the board of trustees for that condo?
Because it was built by the Sherborn Community Housing Corporation.
But not 8 years ago, so that's what I'm asking.
So all those records Bob Delaney had, and Bob Delaney...
Yeah, I'm not talking about the old records. I thought you meant the roof was a replacement roof. You're talking about the original roof?
Right, yes,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Yeah, we should have, boxes and boxes of records in the basement. And I assume you went through all of them. I remember them sitting in that office at one point, covered with dust. So,
So we weren't able to find anything about the roofs.
You know, we looked, that was 8 months to a year ago. Looked in the basement, looked in the office. Yeah, there wasn't anything about finding any information about the roof that would tie to a warranty.
okay.
Call that two. That was one.
No, well, it was
Oh, no,
the grant.
I'm sorry.
He said he was going to talk to Gina to see what happened on the grant.
Mine is to bring something up for future discussions. We've talked a lot about communicating with the public. We've talked a lot about our website. We've recently talked a lot about meeting minutes, and all those things encompass something I think we should be working on. One, we have a lot of committees that don't actually really exist on our website. Meeting minutes aren't really posted in a timely manner. I don't know how they get there. I have no idea. I don't know the inner workings of our website, but it's not totally seamless. I know that an agenda, when it's handed in and posted, it ends up on the town calendar, but not even every committee is listed in the committee's section of the website. So for future items, I think whoever's working on the website, I know we talked about increasing the work on the website to try to reduce the amount of printing and other resources that we spend money on. We should work on streamlining the process, probably in conjunction with how the town clerk gets those things onto the website.
And I guess
Because it's definitely not a seamless. It's not kept up well anyway, because we've had communications where we can't find, or we're emailing meeting minutes. I spent 20 minutes the other day trying to find meeting minutes for the library building committee. I have no idea where they are or where I'd even find them. And I think in 2016 we should be able to expect that we can find them at home on either the website or a server. I don't know where they should be kept.
We're preparing a memo to all the boards and committees to explain what the process is for approving their minutes, turning the minutes into the clerk's office, and then either adding a requirement that they also give us a copy or email it to us, or get it from the clerk when it comes in.
So copies
No, no.
are almost like a violation of document control. I don't think there should be copies of anything. You should be, like, as soon as they hit the clerk's office, in theory, within minutes, they should be somewhere secure, like on the website or a link to it. They're on the server, I don't know. But they shouldn't be bouncing around all over the place, because you'll end up with revision control issues and everything else.
Can I?
Please.
First of all, I agree with you. Secondly, I did forward to the board, and we haven't had a chance to discuss, a proposal from the Commonwealth to amend all the community compacts to include an item for work on every municipality's webpage. Because everything you've said, the governor and the administration agrees 100%. And the problem that you are articulating is a problem not just with Sherborn, it's a problem pretty much statewide. And so there was a memo sent out, which I think I sent to you, David. Maybe not, it's hard to remember everything, but I think I sent it to the board.
You do.
That they're going to be looking to amend our community compact to add in a component that will address the town's website and improving the website. So the ideas that you mentioned, all good, are things that we should have a list of things that we want the state to do. I think the state has pretty much the same list that you've just articulated. But if there's stuff on your list that's not on theirs, or there's stuff on their list that's not on his, the more the better, because we're all in this together, and they want to have websites that work for all the citizens of the Commonwealth, so that we all should be able, not just board members, everyone in this town should be able to get any information they want without even having to do public records requests and filling out paperwork and doing all that stuff. They should be able to go right to the town's website and get whatever information they need. So that's why they made it as part of the community compacts. They see it as something that should be readily available. And they also want to see it somewhat standardized. So if you were someone from outside the town, like a reporter, and you wanted to know something about Sherborn, you should be able to find it in the same place in Sherborn that you find it in, I don't know, Swampscott. So that the reporters know where to find it, so developers know where to find it, so vendors of the town know where to find it, and so citizens know where to find it.
Cuts both ways, that does, doesn't it, Paul? I mean, it means if you have an innovation that's better for your town, but it's not a state standard, the state's going to come in and tell you can't do it. I go on probably a dozen municipal websites a day from all over the state, different ones, different times. So I've seen hundreds of municipal websites. There are really good ones, there are really awful ones. There are ones that look really good and that you think they're functional, and they have no content whatsoever because no board, no board posts their minutes to the page that's really fancy and clear and lists all the members from, the 1998 board.
Looks really good, though.
Yeah, it looks great. So, and we're someplace in the middle. And actually, we've been rising recently, I think. But there's a couple of points, and we should put this on an agenda for an actual discussion because this is only selectmen reports. But you raised an interesting point, Sean, about whose responsibility it is to put the minutes on the website. And absent some state directive, I would think the town administrator ought to have control of the town's website. However, I suspect the town clerk might want control of the town's website, or the state might think that's the proper place to have at least a records repository on the town website. And so those are the kinds of issues that have to be sorted out before we do anything to implement what you're talking about.
Right, and again, that's why I'm bringing it up now, because I think we should sort that out, and I think the onus is on the state. I think the state should lead, because 351 communities shouldn't be trying to reinvent the wheel. It's not that complicated. Businesses wouldn't go out and reinvent this. They'd buy SAP software. They'd buy software from someone that would be, they'd just tailor it. We seem to all reinvent every way we do everything.
There are some really good municipal websites.
I'm sure there are. And I bounced around. I got so ticked I couldn't find some minutes the other night, so I jumped on a couple. I couldn't find anything that I wanted to find in Hopkinton's
Perhaps
website.
one that you recommend as a real standard?
Not off the top of
That
my
we
head,
ought to
but
take a look at?
I can show you guys some.
I'll bring
Some, Boston has a system where you can click on a map and report a pothole or a tree down or a problem with the road. Now I'm sure that's incredibly expensive in Boston. It's the scales of economy that are way different than what we're working with. But if the state ever got involved, and set that up in a way it was accessible to all municipalities, that'd be something we can use. There's already a statewide GIS that you can access through most municipalities' websites, for example.
Somewhere between where we are and where we could go could reduce the workload.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone to take it like I'm just throwing this on the town clerk or anyone else, but
Well, now we get burden permits on.
in any other world,
Anything.
in the business world, if you're required to hand it into the town clerk and they're required to do something with it, that should be the last time anyone touches it.
Yeah.
Right
Because
now,
on the IT world, they can just make it do whatever you wanted it to do. Whoever controls it doesn't matter, but no one has to keep rehandling stuff.
right now we have to manually go in the website and attach it, find out where we want to put it.
It's ridiculous.
Attach it. So most places, or bigger places, will have their website, and then when you click on some sort of minutes or document, it goes to a document server.
Right, with a hyperlink.
So you have like any documents that would come into the town clerk could be scanned right into the document server in there.
Or you just
All in a
download
separate
it
place.
directly from your machine into the program that puts it on the website.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's
You don't have to
just,
scan it, I mean.
None of us are IT geniuses, but there's like a bunch of them that live in town. Someone can figure it out.
Oh, there's probably some great people, maybe we
I
get
know.
some.
And we should make a committee full of them.
No, but you want.
They'll save us tons of money.
10th graders.
10th graders?
Yeah.
That's fine.
I think more 4th graders.
That's a committee of fourth graders.
And I'm gonna have my daughter be the clerk, because she'll have tons of ideas.
You know, if you extrapolate this, we don't need selectmen, you know.
Yeah, that's what,
Yeah.
that's exactly
That'd be
what we're
perfect.
heading.
Okay.
So I'd just like to come back and request that we put the DEP letter on the agenda for the 25th.
Okay.
The last response that we got.
Oh, their response.
The
Yeah,
response
that's
to
right.
us.
Yeah, that slipped. That should have been on earlier than this. I think we talked about it briefly and then never got it on the agenda. Do you have that, David? Or Diane?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, consideration of minutes.
Yeah, we're gonna move those.
We're gonna move those. You said there were some
Well,
changes
there
to a
was
couple
one,
of these?
yeah, there was one that Paul brought to my attention actually, and I went back and reviewed it, so I want to just review it again, and I'll bring everything back.
I had a question for you too. You had something in here that said it was approved 2 to 3. I'm not sure how that works.
I had to-
So,
I had to go back and just recheck on one.
okay, thank you.
And one of the minutes, instead of being January 14, 2016, was actually 2014.
Really? Yeah, that's like those websites I was telling you about.
Yeah.
So it's 2.5 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So
So,
moved.
as fun as it's been? Great. Second? All in favor? Okay, we're adjourned.